Welcome to the Omnisports podcast. Featuring your host, Bobby Labida.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Omnisports podcast. We're going to be talking about basketball today, and I'm really excited. But before we get into it, I want to introduce my new co-host for today, Rashi.
Hi everyone, super excited to be on the air with Bobby. Just quick background, my name is Rashi, as it'll come up time and time again. I am a huge Clippers fan, one of the few Clippers fans out there, huge NBA fan, and I'm also in Bobby's fantasy league, which I've gotten second place at least once in the past 2 years, maybe twice, I forgot. But yes, so I know a thing or two about basketball, and I'm really excited to be on air with Bobby.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be joining Rashi. She had her own podcast for a bit, and we just love sports. We love basketball, and she is in the fantasy league. I won't mention how I'm doing this year in the fantasy league, but I also have come in second at some point. But that's what happens when you pick Chet as your second pick, and he's out most of the year. But of course, this is an emergency pod. Granted, maybe 3 days later than when most emergency pods would be, but probably good. So we have some time to process the genuinely groundbreaking, kind of earth-shattering trade that happened. And if you are not privy to it, I'm sure you all already know about it, but we're talking about Hall of Fame player for Hall of Fame player. And I don't think I've seen that in any sport. You might see a Hall of Famer for a bunch of picks, but you're seeing Hall of Fame. So I want to pass it to Rashi first. What are your first reactions to everything?
Yeah, so I remember I was out getting some drinks, and I checked my phone, and I have 30 notifications on my phone, and I'm confused, and all I see first is my sister just going Luka, AD, and I was so confused about what was going on, because this is, like Bobby said, something that's probably never really happened before. The only other trade I can think of that's anywhere close to this, which it's not quite the same because it was SGA and Paul George. Mm-hmm. The thing is, SGA wasn't really considered to be a future
at the time,
yeah. But now hindsight is 2020, and that was the only other one that I could think of being so shocked about. But this one, I was surprised, and my initial reaction was probably similar to everyone else, which is this can't be real, and also why is this happening? Because I am, again, fairly unbiased, but also as a Clippers fan, I don't like to see the Lakers do well, of course. But I was very confused as to why Luka would be traded for AD, and so confusion for sure. Not believing it was real, and then I jumped into our fantasy group chat, and more reactions come from where the two teams are going to go from this. So I think in terms of the Lakers and the Mavs, just kind of understanding what is their trajectory, not only for this year, but for the next 10 years. Once I processed everything, the very first thing I thought was, why does this help either team? Because to me, Luka both of them are kind of injury prone. I think Luka stays out of shape, even though he did really well last year in the finals. I just found that he in general is out quite a bit. He's been out for the past 2 months. And then AD, of course, is out. If he steps on something wrong, he will be out. Yeah. So I think that was my first thought, was why trade an injury prone player for an injury prone player. But I'll pause there and I want to hear what you think.
Yeah. So my reaction. So the way I found out. So I'm in one other fantasy league, which is a crazy basketball league. It's a 30-team basketball league with you factor in the contracts. It's absurd. It's like a mathematical equation, and it's the free leagues. I'm like, why am I spending so much energy on a league that I can't win anything in? But it was the Discord was AD for Luka, and I assumed everyone what? And then I immediately on Twitter 5 minutes after Shams posts it, I'm like, no, this. What? Stunned. And then, my fiance Jessie, who may be at some point a guest on this pod, she loves Anthony Davis. She grew up in Kentucky, and he's so important to that, that culture. And as a Lakers fan, I say this all the time, AD is super underrated. He's so good at, he is our defensive system. He probably, in my opinion, I'm biased, but should have a defensive player of the year somewhere. I don't know if Rudy Gobert needs all of those that he has. And it's if you look at the defensive players of the year, AD locks them down in the playoffs. He made Jaren Jackson Jr. look silly. He's made Rudy Gobert look silly. Now, if it's a white European center like Sabonis, then AD can't play against him for some reason. But, Anthony Davis really has carried this team. I think a lot of people think of it as LeBron's team, but like on the day-to-day, it really feels like Anthony Davis is doing a lot more of the work. So in terms of short term, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Lakers because we don't have any bigs anymore. Like AD just, 2 weeks ago was like, I like playing the 4 because AD doesn't like playing the center. And all of a sudden now it's like, now we have no bigs whatsoever. And then I guess AD can be the 4 there because they have Gafford and Lively, but it's just like, for us, it's like short term. I don't think we have any chance now because like I love Luka and LeBron, but where's the defense?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if JJ Redick is just trying to collect his white boys. He's got Austin Reeves, Dalton Connect, and like but it was crazy. And then from the Mavs perspective, all my friends who are Mavs fans, it's just like talking to someone who's like friend just passed away, like or like something of that like ilk, like where they can't be fans anymore. There are a lot of protests happening outside the Mavs arena, and it's just like it's crazy because like I think I feel bad because Anthony Davis is gonna get like probably hated by Mavs fans because they're like, this isn't Luka, and it's like you're still getting like a gold medal winner, NCAA champion, like NBA champion, but it's not Luka who you thought you're gonna have for 10, 15 years, and that's just kind of, especially like organization that had Dirk, and had Dirk for 20, like that was their thing, and just to like trade him when no one knew about it seems like, which we'll talk about that in a second because that blows my mind, but it's just like, it's such a weird trade, and how it went down was super not chill especially for Luka, like, and so it's just like, for me, it was like stunned, like my face went white. It was like the equivalent of someone, again, if someone told me like someone was murdered that I knew, I'd be like, it was the same reaction. And so when I found out, I told Jessie, she's like, what's wrong? Because she assumed I was about to say something like horrific happened. And then I told her, and it was horrific, but just in a different kind of, horrific. But yeah, as you're a Mavs fan, like listen, if you want to be a Lakers fan or a Clippers fan, we're pretty cool. But, I've read some interesting conspiracy theories about why they would do this, but we'll get into those in a second.
Yeah,
but what is this? How do you feel about, we're talking about the Mavs perspective. What do you feel about the Mavs perspective just in totality?
Yeah, I think from the Mavs perspective, I agree. There must be some sense of like feeling a little betrayed by the GM. I mean, there is no clarity on the situation, and I wouldn't say I've ever been in the same position as a Mavs fan is right now because luckily neither of our franchises have traded away seemingly franchise players. SGA, yes, but then we got Kawhi, so it felt okay.
Yeah.
And I do think what you said about AD rings true and I think the Mavs fans maybe will understand this once the games start, but I think AD for some reason is getting really disrespected in these talks. I actually think short term, AD is a great fit for the Mavs. And AD, I know he's in his, I think, early 30s, about the same age as us, but he still has years left in him.
Yeah, and I would say for AD, he has this energy prone moniker, which I think historically has been true, but minus this current injury, the last 3 years, he's been real an Iron Man for the Lakers, and people don't, people are still making like the gym shorts jokes. And I'm like, I get it. You hate the Lakers, so that's fine. But like, have you actually walked to a Lakers game in the last, he's played probably more games than LeBron has in the last 3 years. And LeBron is seen as the paragon of longevity, even to this day. Yeah. It almost feels like, it almost feels like the wrong players are traded. Like, I feel like either like LeBron should have gone to the Mavs and we get Luka, because like Luka and AD together would be great, and then you can have LeBron and Kyrie together. Or on the flip side, right, is like, I don't know, like you bring Kyrie here and like, I don't know. Yeah. To me, is like, I love LeBron. He's, best player all the time, depending on who you're talking to. But it's like, why did we get rid of AD? He is our defensive system, and then for the Mavs, like Luka's their offensive system. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fair. And actually, that does remind me. The first thing I thought when I saw this was that LeBron got traded for. I didn't know if it was Luka or Kyrie, but my understanding was that LeBron was going to the Mavericks. And so, again, the text I read very quickly, so I was very confused. I also agree. I actually thought that it would have made more sense especially for the Mavs to have traded Kyrie for AD, because they're about the same age and they bring a little bit different. Like AD, you're right, is a defensive system. He'd be great paired with Luka, who's not defensive at all. And then Kyrie does play some good defense, and he would be good paired with LeBron since they've won together before.
Yeah.
It made sense. And that story would have made more sense too, because in that case, I'm just assuming Kyrie would have been like, I want to play with LeBron, trade me. And that would have been the story right there. So from the Mavs perspective, I do think that the betrayal is interesting, because usually it'll be like Kevin Durant leaving OKC. That is the player choosing to leave. But in this case, this is not even the player choosing to leave. So I can't even imagine what it feels like to be like, it's not even the player that betrayed us. It's our organization that betrayed us. And honestly, if I was a Mavs fan, I'd be like, the Rockets are doing really well. Maybe I just move over there or something like that. But it's a weird move, and I definitely understand feeling betrayed from the Mavs perspective. Now, I would also say, from the Mavs perspective, my advice to a Mavs fan would be to not despair. A, because I don't think you're going to win this year anyways, and B, I think that you're going to get pretty much as far as you would have gotten this year, which is, I don't think that the Mavs now or in the next couple of years are going to win a championship. Like, I just don't see how they beat the other teams in the league. And we can talk about the Lakers in the same way, honestly, right now, or at least in the next couple of years, but I just don't. To me, that's the reason why this trade was so weird. I was like, yeah, it helps the Mavs and it helps the Lakers, but does it really? Like, we're looking at the Celtics and the Thunder and like other teams like that, and yeah. So I think in that way, and like you said, AD kind of crumbles when it comes to European center. Like, Jokic is hard to handle. I don't see how either the Mavs or the Lakers have an answer for someone like Jokic.
Yeah, I agree. I think, the Mavs made it last year on the back of Luka, but part of that, kind of to your point, is like they also made it because of like matchups. Like, let's be real, like only the Timberwolves could have beaten the Nuggets last year, and that's what happened. And then the Mavs beat the Timberwolves. I think to your point, I think the Mavs get crushed by the Nuggets head to head. I think the Lakers play the Nuggets, like it was a sweep. It was maybe the closest sweep ever, but still it was a sweep. You know what I mean? And like and so you could see like, we don't have a chance against them, but then like Memphis, they have Gobert, they have a lot of bigs, so they're able to make it work. But yeah, it's like, it's just so weird because it's like the Mavs proved that they could do it last year, and so by doing this trade, you're conceding as the GM what was a finals possible team last year is not capable this year, which is kind of a weird thing to like kind of blow up so fast, right? I think of how many I love the Clippers, but how long were they keeping players together when they were just happy to make it to like the second round of the playoffs, and for many franchises that's great. Like I think we sometimes get this championship or bust mode, but like you're the Mavs, you're the ninth seed, you're not even in the playoffs really. Like sure, you're gonna play in game. I don't count that as the playoffs. And so it's just like really weird for them, and it's like you piss off Kyrie, who I've heard is really mad about, like he goes to Dallas to play with Luka. Klay Thompson ironically picks the Mavs over the Lakers, probably to play with Luka, and then like you frustrate them. And then like Jason Kidd looked mortified, in that press conference. I watched did you watch the first quarter of the Dallas game yesterday?
No, I didn't catch it.
Oh my gosh. So it's the first quarter's done. Cavs, Mavs, 50-19 is the score. And like the Mavs are just like it was a funeral. Like it felt like a basketball game happened at a funeral. Like that's kind of what happened. It's just like there was no energy. Everyone's just like, what is happening? And it's crazy because like everyone assumed a couple things. First is that like Rob Pelinka twisted his arm and the GM's arm for the Mavs. But no, apparently the GM for the Mavs came to Rob Pelinka. Apparently this has been in the works for a couple of weeks and very hush hush, and it's funny, the Lakers front office, if it's not Rob Pelinka, they're terrible at keeping secrets. But Rob is we've made a few big moves the last few years that were never planned. It's funny, the Lakers are talked about in a lot of big moves, but the ones that have happened have been the ones you never expected because Rob is good at keeping things in-house. I don't think that's true of when Magic was there. I think Magic was basically tweeting our plans to everyone. And so it's if you're Rob, of course someone's hey, you want to give up, you get Luka, you have to give up AD. who's great, but you only have to give up 1 first-round pick. Like, you had to almost give up more. Now, I think AD is, of course, a better player than anyone involved in the Fox trade, but it's like, to get Fox, the Spurs had to give up, 3, 4 first-round picks and a bunch of seconds? Like, and how do you, as the Mavs GM, not even alert? Apparently, no other team knew about Luka being on the table, and it's like, create a bidding war. You could get almost anything you ask for. And so I think as a Mavs fan, that's where I'd be pissed off. Like, okay, you're getting rid of Luka, but like, for what? Like, AD's great, but he's 31. He's currently hurt a little bit, and like, he probably isn't the thing with a pissed off and despondent Kyrie and a washed Klay Thompson. Like, I don't know if that's taking you to the next level, you know.
And I think when you mentioned the bidding war, like, if you are in a win now mode, to me, it's like, why did you not go to the Heat? Like, I feel like the Heat would have given up more. And Luka would have paired well with, I don't know if he would have paired well, but age-wise, he would have paired well with people like Tyler Hero, or like even Bam. And Bam's a good defensive center. Like,
the Heat, like Butler, like you could have gotten and a bunch of first-round picks, you know. Yeah. OKC, I don't think they want Luka, but they have so many picks, you know. It's just like
exactly. And yeah, I mean, even though OKC would have made more sense to go to OKC to be like, hey, look, you got SGA, you got Luka. Luka can be the shooting guard, like what, you know, like he definitely fits in, kind of. But I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense why the Mavs didn't go anywhere else, and it also doesn't make sense to me how they vetoed that Chris Paul trade, but they didn't say anything about this trade because this somehow seems like more aggressive than the Chris Paul trade.
I agree. Like, as a Lakers fan, so Lakers fans have been mad at the NBA forever since the Chris Paul trade, and as someone who had Chris Paul on your team, you can understand why we're mad. Granted, he went to the Clippers because of the rejection of this trade. And like, at the time I was mad, and probably, like, truthfully, I still think that was not the right move for the NBA to make, but I do agree. This feels like, if that's vetoable, which it was, because it was, like, this feels like the clips I saw I saw clips of the Suns bench finding out the tweets, and Kevin Durant was just like, what? like, is this broken? Like, what is going on? It's like, and if like the players are reacting that way and everyone, like, that tells you what kind of like how big of a trade it is. And it's just so
true.
I read, and I talked about conspiracy theories. The conspiracy theory I read about the Mavs, which I hope is not true because I hate owners who do this. So Cuban he was a very active owner. He's now a minority owner. He apparently didn't even know this was happening. So the Mavs had applied, I guess their ownership group owns casinos, and they had applied to add a casino to the Dallas arena, which the Texas legislature said no. And so some people have this big theory that their long-term plans is, since the NBA wants to expand to Vegas, is that they're doing this to tank their value, piss off their fans, which, great job, you're doing that. And then you could leave Dallas for Vegas, have your arena that's attached to the casino, and like a lot of owners think of like, you know, I'm going to make money off this other product. You know, I think of like the Rams owner. Now, Stan, you brought us a championship, but like he as much brought the Rams to LA to have a sports team in LA as much it is to own SoFi Stadium and have like Taylor Swift do concerts there. So I wouldn't put it past an ownership group to think that way, but it's also super dumb when you have like Dallas is like the 4th or 5th largest metro area. Like I hate when people like think Dallas is small. No, it's massive, you know. And then, you know, you have really loyal fans and it just like feels icky. So part of me is like, I hope that's not true, because like, how do you sell your city out like that? But at least if it's true, I'm like, okay, at least that makes basketball sense, kind of, because otherwise it doesn't, you know what I mean?
Or it makes, I don't know if it makes basketball sense, it makes business sense, but if that happened, the oversight is just insane or like the lack of oversight, I should say. Because
for sure,
if there is going to be a basketball team in another city, like it should be Seattle. Like they deserve it.
Oh, for sure, Seattle. Like you should expand to Seattle first, and then add a brand new expansion team in Vegas.
Vegas, but also like that. That would be so disgusting. You are right. Like some of these conspiracy theories I've heard, that one I did hear that one as well. Just makes me feel kind of. It just does not make me feel good about being an NBA fan, because like that's not what this is about. Like it's about the fans, and these fans like supported Dirk, supported Luka. Like Luka, I don't know if you saw the video that he dropped when he like got to LA and like, you know, saying hi to all the Lakers fans, but he looked like he'd been crying. Like it was very sad. And this is someone who last year was sick during the playoffs, was injured during the playoffs, and like kept going. And it kind of gives me that like Isaiah Thomas like vibe.
Oh yeah.
Boston did to him. Same thing, like IT, same feeling of like, this is gross, but also like, this is a player, like a franchise player, not someone who's traded to you, and someone you traded for. Like, you could have gone Trae Young otherwise. And
Yeah.
if your problem was really his diet, then you probably should have just. I'm sure there's a way you can work that out with him. It doesn't make sense to me to like trade him for like, and then also to trade him for nothing. Like, that is such a blow to the ego as Luka. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, to me, the Mavs also shot themselves in the foot, because Luka is going to come back and just be like, if I know Luka, then it would be that he would come back like, really work out, really get in shape, just a revenge tour next season.
Oh yeah, like anytime Luka plays the Mavs from now on, like everyone like bet the overs on whatever Luka's likes. It's like, because like he, it's like when Luka faced the the Clippers or the Suns, right? He had an extra edge because he, not the Clippers as much, it did happen, but like the Suns especially, he faced Devin Booker, he saw red, and he was just like, I'm ready. Yeah, so it's just like you piss off the person who functions the best under spite in the NBA. Like, I think, like, like, some players play really well with joy. Like, I think of, Tyrese Halliburton, he's balling when he can be a joyful player. Yeah. Luka, if he can live off of spite and pettiness, like, that's when he drops 70 on the most efficient, like, 50-point game in history. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, like, it's crazy, and, it's insane. And I'm with you, it hurts, like, the NBA fan, it hurts the fandom, because, like, fans, like, I don't fault any Mavs fans who are like, I'm done, for a little bit, or at least for the rest of the season, or if not longer. Like, I would do the same thing if I were there in position.
Yeah, so, it's like when the Clippers traded Blake Griffin, I stopped watching the Clippers for a little bit because I was just like, what am I watching? This is, you just sold him on this vision of like being the franchise player, and then you traded him. And granted, we got more back technically than the Mavs did for Luka. Like, at least we got pieces that helped us build towards Kawhi and Paul George. Yeah. Whatever happened with Kawhi and Paul George, but technically, like, that is a better trade for the Clippers than this is for the Mavs, in my opinion. And also, Luka. It's so interesting to me because the reaction I didn't mention was, which is probably the biggest reaction, is I, as a Clippers fan, hate Luka. Like, I do not like Luka. He's done things to the Clippers that I do not appreciate, and then he also just complains a lot. Like, he has the most technical fouls in the NBA, and like Draymond Green's in the NBA, and he still has the most technical fouls in the NBA. So things like that. And of course, I wouldn't say like I hate the Lakers, but I'm not a fan of the Lakers. Maybe if I wasn't in LA so much of the time, I would maybe like the Lakers a little bit more. But the way that Lakers fans treat me, like, I don't love them. You are an exception. But the Lakers teaming up with Luka, to me, is just like the worst of both worlds in a way, because I don't like either very much. And I don't know if Luka's going to have the same vengeance against the Clippers on the Lakers as he did on the Mavs, because I think now he has bigger fish to fry with the Mavs. But I would be interested. But at the same time, I'm also much less afraid of the Lakers now than I was pre-trade, but at least this season, because like Zubac's doing really well. Like, Norman Powell's doing really well. And I don't know who on the Lakers can hold Zubac. Maybe Rui, but like, to me, I'm just like, Norman Powell's still there, Kawhi's still there, James Harden is still there, like, and James Harden doesn't play very good defense, but maybe Luka will change it up. I'm not sure, but I can imagine James Harden is still going to be able to be a good matchup for Luka, because he was last year too.
Yeah. And so, as a Lakers fan, it's like kind of what you're talking about. Is I know the amount of hate the Lakers will probably get from this, and it's unfortunate in that if you were the Lakers position, I think every person makes the same trade, right? So it's like, there's a legitimate, and I do think it's legitimate, and I say this as a Lakers fan. It's like, we got LeBron, we keep getting star people, and that can be very frustrating. I'm not denying that, but it really feels like we're set up to be the bad team that everyone hates, because Luka is probably one of the most dislikable superstars because of the foul baiting, like you talked about. I've been a huge, even last year, I thought Luka should have won MVP, or was really close to it. And I thought I predicted the Mavs would go farther than people expected, which I was thankfully right with that prediction. But Luka plays a very interesting brand of basketball, and it sometimes is beautiful and sometimes it's very frustrating, especially when it's foul baiting. I had this cataclysmic thought as for non-Lakers fans, is like, think about all the whistles the Lakers get, and now you add Luka to that. Like, oh god, like, we're gonna be insufferable. Sorry, my cat, she wants to be really involved in this conversation. But I was just thinking that, I'm like, man, if people think we are insufferable now with foul calls, imagine if Luka is getting foul calls, because Luka, he doesn't necessarily. I think he complained more than he should have, but there's clearly times he should have gotten fouls that he didn't. But like now it's just gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm so worried. Like what I'm hoping is like Luka gets to be next to LeBron, who like is the most. As an athlete, the most physically worried about his body, right? And so if you're worried about Luka's concerns about his body, which I think they are overwrought, like he's played every summer, like internationally, like he's put more minutes on his body in the last 6 years than maybe any basketball player on the planet. It just like doesn't work when you're also, don't have like the best diet. But I don't think like people are acting like he's like Shaq when Shaq was playing. It's like, no, it's not like that at all. Like Shaq could barely run up and down the court until like February, of that season. Like Luka is just like, I think he overworks himself and then he doesn't rest, or he rests and he never works out. It's like one of those things. So it's just hopefully he'll but like you said, maybe he'll be built out of spite and just like, oh, you think I'm fat now, like get super swole.
Let me see. Yeah. No, and I mean, there is a bit of, as I think ahead, yes. I do think, yes, one thing is the Lakers fans, they will get hate. And it is interesting because, at the beginning, everybody was like, oh, my God, the Lakers finessed this. And people are still saying that, like, the NBA did this to make the Lakers relevant. And to me, it did feel like that a little bit, where it was just like the Lakers were suddenly like, yeah, AD was doing really well, but there wasn't much to talk about with the Lakers, whereas you have all these other teams, like the Thunder doing really well, Rockets doing well, Grizzlies doing well. And so it was like, it felt like a weird, like, last minute like Hail Mary to make the Lakers relevant again, which it definitely did. But even now, like the Lakers in terms of betting odds, like they're still only number 6 or something like that. Like I think, and it's so funny, Austin Reeves went on the podcast, The Young Man of Three or whatever, and he was like, people don't know basketball. And that was kind of what I was thinking a little bit when I saw some of these comments about like Luka joining the Lakers. And it was honestly a lot of Lakers fans, which makes sense. Yes, if Luka came to the Clippers, I would be doing the same thing. Even if we had the same roster as the Lakers, but it was a lot of like, that's it. Like it's over for the league. Like this is it. And I was like, you're forgetting about a lot of teams. Like yes, the Mavs don't necessarily get better long term because of this, but that doesn't change to me like the Thunder or the Celtics, who like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They're not the youngest, but they're still young. They're still sub 30, I believe. And so like they have longevity, and Kristaps is like doing very well right now. So you have those two, and then you have some other teams that like kind of come out of the woodwork sometimes. I mean, who knows what the Nuggets, what's going to happen. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what happens this season with the Mavs and the Lakers against a team like the Celtics, and then in the long run against a team like the Thunder.
Yeah, I think in the short term, like you have to like factor in chemistry too. Like I imagine there's gonna be some bumps in the road. Like I think both teams are worse this year for this trade. Because we don't have, the Lakers no longer have defense. Like it's kind of like the Lakers. It's not quite as bad as it is with the Spurs and Wemby, but like the Spurs are like historically terrible at defense when Wemby's not on the court, and we're like that with AD, and then we're like competent with these players on the court because they're just so good at basketball, at defense, and then like. So does AD go there? And like, I feel like defense is a lot more complicated to transition to like on a new team, because like defensive scheme is, I think, a lot more complicated than offensive scheme, especially if like your offensive scheme, which is what the Mavs have done. Poor Jason Kidd, his philosophy's been, Luka, do what you want to do. Like, that's been the Mavs system, and like Kyrie, do what you want to do. And so it's just like the Mavs, like I don't know what their offensive identity is. Like I know Luka's been out for a bit, but it's like even when Luka was in, they were doing well. I know they're not doing well now in their 9th seed, but both teams become maybe a play-in or maybe play-in teams at best, and it's like the Lakers were great at getting the 7th or 8th seed and losing the first round, and it's like that's probably what will happen again, and maybe the same thing. I don't even know if the Mavs make it, because I feel like the rest of the Mavs team, like I don't know if they're going to give 100, and I don't blame them, especially when it's like no one knew it was going to happen. And like I think the thing that surprised me the most of this whole situation is if it makes sense if Luka says something to the effect of like, I'm not re-signing here. But Luka said like that, like, and even the GM said he never requested a trade. He never asked to leave. So this person who carried your team to a championship, because he's traded, now can't sign a supermax. And so Luka loses out on like $100 million. It's just like, how do you do that to someone who's carried your franchise? Like, I just like to your point earlier about the Mavs is like, if you're a superstar, I'm never going to the Mavs with this ownership group, like, ever. You know what I mean? Like, what do you, because, like, as much as back when we had Kobe and we signed Kobe to his last contract, and it was a terrible contract. Kobe was old. He was, he had an Achilles. But, like, we did that as, like, hey, Kobe, this is, like, a recognition of, like, what you did for us. And we sucked for 3 years because of it. But, like, I think most Laker fans would say we would take that to have had Kobe end as a Laker, right? And, not his extracurricular problems withstanding, right? Is like, we would have wanted that as fans. And so, like, for Luka to never even request it, like, Kobe requested a trade at one point too, like Luka never did such a thing. And I also feel like Luka kind of liked being not in the spotlight. I feel like that's a very European player style. Like, I think Jokic is happy being in Denver. I think, Giannis made a comment of, like, I want all the Europeans in the big cities. Like, I want Jokic on the Knicks and stuff like that. Might be a little tongue-in-cheek from Giannis, who's in Milwaukee. But, like, but it's the kind of thing of, like, I don't think Luka, like, he's now going to have to deal with the LA media, right? Imagine, like, if the concern about it is his weight and you have to deal with the LA media, which is, like, maybe the most vapid and shallow media, like, basketball media, like, it just, that feels bad for him. And so I feel bad for him in that regards. And I hope I just want everyone to be nice to everyone, because it just feels shitty for everyone. Excuse my French. It just feels shitty for everyone.
It does. And I do feel like there are some jokes about, like, Luka leaving to go to Denver or whatever. That was the only team that I would have loved to see Luka on besides the Mavs was Denver.
For sure, I agree with that.
There's, like, and it works, right? Because, like, Jokic and Luka work together, but also, like, they have this funny dynamic. Like, that would have been great to see. Again, a team that I don't understand why the Mavs didn't call, because I'm sure they could have done some kind of 3-team trade to get Luka to the Nuggets. And I actually think that trade would have been popular in the NBA. Like, I think that would have been a good trade to see. But I do agree that, like, again, even though I don't like Luka, and I'm sure the moment that he starts flopping and crying, like, maybe I'll go back on this, but I do agree with you that the LA media is shallow, and in general, people in LA are pretty shallow about basketball, and they like the showboating, but I don't think a lot of them know that much about what's going on. So they'll see, like, the highlights, or they'll see things about Luka and make very quick assumptions, and I think that's not good, especially for mental health, coming from, like, being dropped like this by the Mavs and then coming to a city that's not quite built to be forgiving. I think you're right. I actually think LA is the most, like, I don't think you'd get this even in New York, because New York has put up with the Knicks being bad for so long.
Yeah, the Knicks, like, the New York media is, like, toxic, but it's a different kind of toxic than the LA media. It's, like, more just generally angry, whereas here we're very, like, it's very, like, there's venom in it, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I think, again, also coming to the Lakers versus coming to the Clippers, like, I think you can fly under the radar if you're on the Clippers, like James Harden has kind of done.
Where people don't realize Harden's having, like, an amazing season,
Exactly.
Like, he really is, and people don't know that.
Yeah, and I went to a Clippers game recently, and I was very happy about that. Or Norman Powell is having a great season. Like, nobody's talking about it, and I do think that the Clippers are going to do better in the playoffs, and the Lakers are, at least, I mean, I'm not saying that we're going to win anything. I would love to, but, like, I think we can make it to the second round.
I think so, especially, like, I'm interested to see how Eubanks plays after that trade. And
I'm excited about that one, yeah.
Yeah,
But I think that's a good example of, like, this is not a team that he can fly under the radar with, and it does put extra pressure on him coming back from injury, like being out for 2-3 months, like, and now having to show up the way that he's going to have to show up with the Lakers is going to be tough. But I agree. I don't think, maybe they both make the playoffs. Maybe they both do kind of well in the playoffs. I don't think either of them is making it to the finals. I think that there's many teams in the West that will outplay them. Yeah. And then there's a bit of, like, again, even with this one, I feel like there's a bit of showboating with this trade that makes me think, like, everybody wants to talk a lot. And that's the other thing is, like, the Lakers need a center, and everybody's, like, clamoring for Kessler, but I don't see how they get Walker Kessler. Like,
yeah. Like, I would say I'm fine with this trade for this year if we had Walker Kessler coming on the back end, but, like, I don't see that coming. Like, Utah was part of this trade. And, like, they didn't include Kessler, so I don't see us including. Apparently, Utah didn't know the trade involved AD or Luka. They were just like, "Oh, we get these picks, sure," like, which is so funny. Which is so
like,
funny.
We'll take AD for Kessler. Like
what? That's an option? Yeah, no. It's funny. A very short tangent, but it's related to the trade. So in that league, I told you that crazy basketball league I'm in. You can drop contracts if someone's traded, and I have Maxi Kleba, who's, like, a terrible contract for what he produces in fantasy. Sure, you're lovely, Maxi, but it felt like Rock Lee taking off the ankle weights when I got to drop you. But so I texted my friend, like, I can drop him now because of the trade, right? right? And my friend is super fluent in basketball. It's my friend Dan, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you can." And that's how he found out about the Luka trade and Anthony Davis trade. It was framed to him from me as the Maxi Kleber trade. And so he's like, "Why did I just find out from you that Maxi Kleber was traded?" And that's how I found out about the biggest trade in NBA history. I'm like, "Sorry, bro, it'd been 2 hours after the fact, so I assumed you knew." You know.
That's on him for sure. Yeah.
No, for sure at that point.
That's
Especially
so
like he was in the same Discord that was popping off, so I was surprised. But yeah, but it's just like, again, this feeling of like, what is happening, you know? And I think it, and I feel it kind of, this will sound stupid, it ruins the rest of the trade deadline, because like Fox got traded. That's a massive trade. Like, good for the, like, I think Fox and Wemby together, I'm super excited for that. It felt like when that notification hit, it was like, who cares?
No, it's so true. And I saw comments from people who probably don't know basketball that well that were like, why does this trade just not feel like as impactful as the Luka trade? And I was like, it is impactful. You just don't think it's impactful because you are living in this delusion that like somehow the Lakers or the Mavs are going to win it all this year, when I actually think that this makes the Spurs a lot more formidable.
I agree. The Spurs scare me, like, long term. Like, they're a plucky, will somehow make it to the second round kind of team, is like what I feel possibly. Like, is their high end now. And of course their future with Wemby is always like the freaking stars. So
no, that's very true. But I am intrigued to see what the Lakers do with this, because I agree. This is not, I don't think anybody thinks this is a for now trade for the Lakers. It's definitely for the future trade, but it is, who do they bring in? And the thing about LA is, or especially the Lakers, is superstars do want to play there, so I can imagine they can get some big people to come in, which is like a little scary, I think, as like someone who's not a Lakers fan, because we want to see, I really would like to see another team do well. Like, I want to see the Thunder do well. And I don't know who they bring in, but I can imagine them bringing in someone. Again, they brought in Luka, who I would never expected. So I'm a little concerned to see, and I'm sure for Lakers fans, excited for them to see like who the Lakers can bring in, because you guys have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, it feels as a Lakers fan, it just feels very weird, because like AD was so important to us, you know, to lose that, and then to be super excited about getting Luka, who, like, you know, everyone would, I mean, we still make fun of the Kings and Hawks, you know, years later for not drafting him, but now, like, I saw people like, do we make fun of the Mavs for drafting him and then trading him? Is that worse than drafting Marvin Bagley or Trae Young? Like, probably, yeah, you know.
I think so, yeah.
Because like, you draft Trae Young, at least you didn't like destroy your fan base. Like, you still get to root for Trae, you know what I mean? So
exactly,
like,
at least Trae's doing something. Like, you'll get to the second round probably, but like, no, I agree. And that is like the implications that I don't know what the Mavs are thinking, and I'm intrigued to see if anything more comes out about it. But like, how did you not think about the fact that like the fans, and yes, like you said, players, like what messaging are you sending to your own players and then players that you might want to sign in the future? Because this is like not a good look for you.
No, like like no one judged, like when KD left, no one judged the Nets because KD wanted out, you know. But it's like, this is apparently no one wanted out on either side, and now it's just like, you know, if it were a super unfair trade the reverse way, right? Like, we would, like, Lakers fans would be like, how dare you do this to AD? It's like, because we got Luka, we're not like, you know, we have pitchforks right now, but it's a massive trade. 2 Hall of Famers, you know, like, they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame, because especially with the Basketball Hall of Fame, they don't care about just NBA. So it's like AD has a gold medal, he has an NCAA championship, Luka's done everything in EuroLeague. So like, they're both like, maybe Luka needs like one more year, but like, if they retire now, they're both Hall of Famers, and they're both like relatively still in their prime, you know. Yeah, AD's a little older, but it's not like, you know, we're getting Gary Payton at 38 like the Lakers did, you know, all those years ago. You know, we're getting like, these are 2 still productive Hall of Fame caliber players in the league traded for each other. It's just crazy.
Yeah, this is insane. But I'm intrigued to see what happens in the next, even in the next 2 or 3 days with the trade deadline. I know it's not going to be anything close to this, but I'd love to see who other teams pick up. And then I'm also intrigued to see what the Lakers and Mavs do to build the rest of their rosters out. Maybe they prove me wrong. Like, maybe one of them end up winning the championship. But to, like, right now, I'm not convinced that this year or in the next 2 or 3 years, either of them is going to win the championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, maybe this helps the Lakers retool in a couple years, but like, I don't know. I don't know what it does in the short term for either. Which, like, as a Lakers fan, at least I can hold on to that hope, because I have Luka for a long time. But like, you know, like, does AD stay there? Does he leave? Like, I feel like there's a lot of questions, you know. Like, Luka in theory doesn't have to re-sign for the Lakers, right? And if that happens, like, does that does this help? So I think it could end up being one of those trades that long term is like a massive lose-lose. Even if the Lakers get more quote unquote value today, it could still end up not being good long term.
And I think that was what you just said is very true, which is like neither player is promised longevity on either team. Like it could easily be that one of them hops out like in the next couple of years. I know Luka's extension is coming up in 2026 or something, and he could walk away, and he actually might get just as much if not more money by going to another team. So like if that's really what he's after, like he can easily leave. So it maybe there's some secret, that was another conspiracy theory I heard, was some secret thing where he was like, I'm actually going to be going to Denver, and so I don't know if that's true. I doubt that he's going to leave, but there is like the possibility that he gets frustrated in LA and he does leave.
Yeah, for sure. And then like both teams are definitely worse for wear because of this. So
exactly. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah,
any other thoughts?
I think honestly, I think we covered a lot of it. It's an interesting trade, and it is. I know I'm probably being more cynical than most people because I don't want the Lakers to do well, but at the same time, it is good maybe to have the balanced opinion.
And I'm probably more cynical as compared to other Lakers fans just because like AD is like the guy in our household, and that's not just even a Jesse fan take. Like that's just like as someone who watches Laker game, I'm always mad at how AD is talked about in sports because it's like a lot of people, to your point before, it's a lot of people who don't watch basketball and only watch highlights that like talk about AD the way he does. It's like he's like, in my opinion, the third best like two-way player in the league, like minus Giannis and like Wemby. It's like like he can do both, and he's done both for the Lakers. Like we don't win a championship without him, so it's very bittersweet to lose him. And I hope he kills it. Like I want people to see like how good he is because he's so freaking good at defense. Like
I am. That is one thing I will say is I never could have spoken well of Anthony Davis in the last couple of years because he was on Lakers, but now I can. So
you can hype him up. Yeah,
AD is the best player ever. No, but like I do want him to do well, especially because there's this feeling of like I want him also to get that like kind of revenge vindication of like I also am like you all are discounting me right now, and I also am still a great player. So I'd love to see him do well this year. And honestly, like I wouldn't be mad if he proved me wrong and like somehow led them to a championship because like I'm happy to be proven wrong about that.
That'd be a cool storyline. Like exactly. Like I don't know if how the Mavs feel in that storyline where they get the championship but it's not Luka. But like I'm for that. Like I had no expectation the Lakers like the last couple of years minus our championship, which was again a kind of a very perfect storm to the Mavs last year. Was just matchups ended up perfect in the playoffs, and I think LeBron was able to keep everyone focused in the bubble probably better than the other people could focus. Like I think that's part of it. Why the Lakers won. But like it's just like we would need a perfect storm already to have won, and now it's just like there's probably no hope.
No. I mean, there's always surprises, but you're right. And I would be surprised to see someone beat the Cavs, the Celtics, or like the Thunder, or
those teams are like good, and like Houston's rising. Like I think I also want people listening to this. We're talking about this, but we're also talking about two like. Maybe they're the interesting teams in terms of the media talking about, but in terms of basketball this season, they're not like neither of them are in the top like 8 of like interesting, and so like it's gonna be so cool watching Luka in gold and purple and like and AD in blue and white, but it's also like there's a lot of really good basketball I don't want people to miss because they're so fixated on this.
I agree with that, and that actually I think that definitely takes me to my whole point about like definitely excited to talk more about other teams in the future because I think I have some great thoughts about some of these other teams and how well they're doing. But this trade's going to dominate the media cycle for at least a couple more days. So enjoy it, and then I want to get back. I'm excited to get back to the actual idea.
And so for all of you listening, if you enjoy this, like feel free to, I don't know where we are, but like, comment, subscribe. If there's anything you want Rashi and I to talk about in a future episode or any other trade deadline dealings that will happen, I'm sure by the time we're done recording this, some huge other trade will happen and we'll feel stupid and out of date for it. But just let us know and we'll try to bring it up the next time, make sure that we cover all the good stuff. But this trade was so historic, and I say this like as a fan of mini sports. I don't like we're talking like this is the most big trade in like maybe American sports in the last like 30 years or so, like it, and like almost like kind of easily, which is a crazy statement to say with such confidence, but it really is that historic.
Agreed. Yes. Thank you so much for offering your thoughts too, Bobby, because it's great to hear from a Lakers fan who isn't biased, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I love the Lakers. I bleed gold and blue, but I also like respect other people and not just like I can see I see our biases and I will play into them when I'm with them, but outside I'm like, hey, fam, that's not it.
Love that. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll let Bobby take you home.
All right, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, and I hope you have a great week, and hopefully your favorite player doesn't get traded from your team. And if so, we'll talk about it next week.